So it is live. This is meant to be a compilation of all the latest video ideas. I'm kind of stalling right now so I can get a sound check. Right on, Ultra Instinct. Thank you for the support. Let me see. I want to know if it's using my right microphone. Right on. Okay. So this video information that I've been wanting to share. So I'll just make this one longer video, just kind of chilling out in the night, in the evening, slowing everything down. That's what I usually do if I'm have enough energy to do anything like that. But before I go any further, I want to first do some what they call housekeeping. So let's see. About 3 weeks ago, I was looking to redo my website, and I'm gonna start putting a whole bunch of stuff up on there. But I went into my website editor, whatever it is, and I started to look, and I saw that I have a whole damn mailbox, and it was full of people who had emailed me. I don't mean to laugh and like, oh my god, it was so funny to know that it was there the whole time. And when I looked and saw all the stuff that people were writing, it was a pretty wonderful thing. So thank you very much for the people who did reach out and emailed me through my website. Right on, AZ Tech. AZ Tech came over from M1. M1 was going live earlier, kind of sparked me to do a live today or this evening. But it was a good idea too, because then I can get this info. Also, well, I'm kind of bouncing all over the place, but so yeah, first, thank you for the people who have been reaching out, supporting me for as long as I've been doing this. Is over 10. I started making YouTube videos in 2012. I had made little videos before that, like earlier than that, with my brother, and we had another YouTube channel called Subtle Energies Radio. We did some like funny little videos and stuff like that, and then moved into just Subtle Infinity and doing a lot of the now doing a lot of the compilations, which is some of the most fun stuff to do these days, because you can speak without speaking in a sense. And on that note, transition from that into what's going on with the channel, where I'm at mentally with the whole YouTube interaction and the constant attacks that are hitting pretty much every day. They're taking down videos or doing something. Something's happening. Removing subscribers is the most obvious thing. Trying to, yeah, it's been pretty crazy. But you never know when they can just take the channel down. And I'm just moving over to do more stuff. Just posted straight on to. I'm trying to find a good microphone position here. So pardon my. Okay. So you never know when they could just take your channel down when you're just sharing it, because they're making up reasons to give you strikes and do stuff like that. They came up with all this. Just I don't want to name them all, but there's various community guidelines that they just generate out of thin air that will um, contribute to either removing of your content, which is the main thing that happens frequently. It'll just say, "Oh, you won't get a strike, but we're gonna remove this from the internet." I'm like, okay, well, so all those views, all those communications in the comments, all gone, like all that, and that's just scrubbing. That's scrubbing of the public record, which is pretty crazy, but not surprising. I'm also reading the chat, so if you want to reach out in the chat, I'll be interacting here and there. I'll go bounce back and forth between flow and then check check on how it fits in. So yeah, they hit pretty hard. A lot of yeah. So that was part of the reason why I hit so hard. Myself putting so much content out there, um, because it's just a wider spread and more pieces to the puzzle. So anyway, thank you for the support. Um, this channel could at any point be taken down. So the new compilations that I'm making, I'm uploading straight to Rumble, because Rumble doesn't really play that, at least what I've seen so far. Um, so the compilation, the mixtapes are up there, and I'll continue to do those as I feel, whenever I can get around on it, and I'll continue to make videos where I'll be speaking, but be few and far between now that there's so many different things going on. So let's see. Let me get to. So I did that in the inbox. Thank you. And then I was trying to remember. Okay. So I'll just start. If I forgot anything, I'll just get back to stardom. What up, M1? Yeah, I started to go live, so see Odyssey to upload video. Odyssey to upload video. Okay, I'll look into that. Thank you, Nona PCB. Okay, so yeah, so let me close that out. The Rumble thing. So Rumble doesn't really lock down on censorship as far as, I mean, I'm not putting anything into it as far as getting the stuff out there. I'm just uploading it there more of as a backup. All of it is just documentation anyway. But that channel is going to be where the latest stuff will be uploaded. And what I wanted to close that on is in reference to YouTube. It came to a point to where their censorship started to affect how I produced my content in reference to the mixtapes in particular. And when you're speaking, you want to avoid stuff anyway. I didn't even want to do that, but in reference to the stuff that was getting taken down regularly, oh shit, I can't see. In reference to the stuff that was getting taken down regularly, the mixtapes are like heavy pings. So anytime I would upload one, they would take down like 1.7 or something like that. It was like just under 2, some crazy ratio. And then there's a obvious algorithm to in reference to upload timing and video removal. So there's definitely a list of videos that have already been chosen to be taken down. And when I upload a video, whatever video that's on that list will be taken down, whether it's 1, 2, or even 3. That's happened before. But that's how I'm observing this algorithm, on top of them removing subscribers and hiding the channel and the videos, and not, jumping from at the end of my video going to another some other subject or some crazy, whatever, all this other stuff. But you can see it if you've been observing the internet for any amount of time. Thank you very much. I appreciate the support. Uh, Royal Tiamo out. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, years and years of information has just been removed from, like, scrubbed. I keep track of every single one. I'm keeping them. When they send you an email like, "Hey, by the way, we're just taking this down. You're not gonna get a strike, so good job with that. But we're not gonna let it fly. In fact, we're gonna delete every like crumb of its existence off of the internet. And hope you made a copy of it. Have a nice day. No strike. Good for you." And then some of them actually do give strikes. So it just depends on what there's in. A lot of the latest stuff that I was uploading, that they have a new algorithm going to where there there's an emphasis of spreading, like, contacting copyright stuff and immediately flagging it, and then just making it like hyper streaming it for them to give you a strike, and then you'd have to contact them to get it removed. It's all kinds of crazy stuff, but they're making it impossible to freely work, on their platform. um, and it's come to that point to where it's just kind of like a every now and again thing. But if I'm gonna produce something on a regular, I'm gonna do it somewhere where I'm not gonna be inhibited. So when I would make stuff, like I started making the COVID focused mixtapes, and those surely would not even they would not even come close to it, YouTube. But if I put it on Rumble, there's no problem at all. So once I started to make mixtapes focused on Rumble, I started to realize that, I mean, I always knew, but it started to feel a lot better because there's zero um, buffering. I'm not holding anything back. I'm not trying to bounce around their algorithms. I'm not trying to make it cool for the YouTube community guideline mob. That mafia has a pretty good, you know, spread of figures and ways to approach you. So it's just pretty obvious. It's just too obvious at this point what they're doing. I mean, I'm sure people can look at numbers in reference to video movement that You can do that. I know there's websites that do that, and you don't even have to be an owner of the website. You can do that for other people's websites or YouTube channels. But the numbers, the ratio is just, it's crazy in reference to the algorithm. So that's why I was like, all right, I'm going to just put this on Rumble, because if I don't want to just invest all this energy into a platform that's just gonna it's gonna drown it. It's just not worth it. So might as well just make the focus on something that's not gonna inhibit the creative process in any kind of way. So just put it on Rumble. I'm not doing it for the views anyway. It's just to put the information out there. So it really doesn't matter what platform it's on, as long as it's out there. And it's pretty easy to like get stuff from Rumble, and keep it for yourself just as easily as you could in YouTube, probably even easier. But yeah. So as far as housekeeping, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to share with the channel. Oh, there's, like I said, I'll be working on the website. I'm gonna start putting some stuff, some little merch stuff that I had already made. Um, I made some dry fit shirts for when I play disc golf, and I made some to make available for everybody. So I will put it on the website. Once I get that going, right now that's at the bottom of the list to get done. It's just, yeah. So a lot of stuff going on. So that. Yeah, let me just get to, sorry if I know I hit the mic right there. Let me look at the chat while I'm getting over there. Yeah, gotta find out who owns Rumble. That's true. But as of right now, at least it doesn't look like they're censoring the content. There's not an active attack on particular information, at least from what I'm sure. There is in some kind of way, because that's huge, and the way people are pushing it, that, yeah, it's, if it's not, then eventually it will be. So let's see. Okay. I kind of don't know what that means. Story. This is why that sexual programming is pumped through every angle, is to create that story, just like you would be in a dream. Just imagine if you were going to sleep in a dream and somebody else could control your dreams. So when you're awake, the same thing can happen. This is what's happening. This is what the American dream is. It's a controller of your dreams. It's inundate your perspective, your reality, like a TV flicker rate, as much as possible, to make you desire this dream, want it, reproduce that dream for your future generation, your children, your story, what perspective your ancestors' story comes from. Your ancestors' story comes from the perspective of so-called white people. If you're in the Americas, from my perspective, when I went to high school, we were getting taught African American studies and stuff. That's, nobody says that. That's make believe. That's made up by that people who came over to this land and created a story for us to tell each other. And we've been repeating that story to our generations, our future generations, and we have been magic spelled out of our relationship to our land. This is why they can't find any real names of who we are, or at least they know, but they don't want to say what. And people say, "Oh, what is they?" Well, if you're gonna ask a dumbass question like that, then you're not. You don't need to be in this discussion. Honestly, we don't have time to be getting into all of that. So, The they is a repeated story that continues to exist through generations of people who inflict the intentions within those stories onto the people who are living now, and for them to put that onto their future generations. This has been going on for generations, in particular with the original people of the Americas, particularly what they're calling the United States. This is why they made the United States, because it was just it was already a mix. It was already different. They just named it, took it over, just like everything else. Music industry, everything gets taken over. So the country was taken over like Hollywood. Like it's been mainstreamized. It's been the whole country was, and they labeled it. It's been pop starred. It turned into pop world. This is what the United States, the American dream, the anybody can come here. There's open borders. There's whatever. All this, we got people from all over the world, and then they used Michael Jackson with that "Heal the World" shit, and then they were just like, oh yeah, and at the expense of your relationship to the truth, the reality, who and what you really are. They sold you humanity at the expense of yourself. So the predictive programming within the movies, within the music, within your own historical, within your colleges, your universities tell these stories. A perfect example is taking the cosmology and flipping it and reversing it and selling you all kinds of nonsense at the expense of your indigenous, your ancestral relationship to this experience, this land, this reality, that whatever you want to call this blip of a dream that is your lifetime, whatever that is, it's a code that is being either amplified or manipulated. It depends on how the hand is arranged. So the hand on the original people of the land here, and speaking in reference to this because in order to change what's going on in the rest of the world, there needs to be justice that needs to be affecting the in the middle of in the belly of this shit. The so-called third world countries are third world countries because largely because of the power grip of the Western mindset, and that control has, like an octopus, put its tentacles into all these other countries, calling them and creating third world, what they call third world countries. It's the elevating of this caste system to maintain control and dominance, to keep these people on the top and these people on the bottom. And in the meantime, you fight in between. You have to have a main character. You have to have somebody to play all the roles that they put in these movies. These characters that they put in movies, they need in order to make the story believable. Because people who they're selling to have to buy into characters within those movies. So the main characters and the archetypes between characters are what make good mind controls. In music, in movies, it's attractive. It's like think of something like if you can imagine attractiveness physically, you can imagine an attractiveness subconsciously, or psychological attractiveness, that which goes straight to your mind, your cells, your cellular attractiveness. That's a thing that exists out there that these entities are aware of and install into various programmings. I'm hoping I'm probably just not too close enough to it. I keep losing myself with the microphone. But how is the audio, by the way? Anybody in the chat? So this ties in with censorship. Thank you. This ties in with censorship, and as much as there's a production, they make production companies to install particular storylines. You have to understand that they have deconstructing deconstruction companies to attack content that goes counter to what they want to inflict upon the world. I wasn't gonna go into all this. Some people ask why and stuff. And I'm gonna get off track right now. So, thank you. Um, all right, go with it because I do want to just move into. So, on the micro scale, it shuts down your even inclination to seek something more natural, seek something more relative to who and what you are on a more natural scale. So they want you to buy, or I'll say that. It's a storyline that's being told. So, or it, if that makes you feel better, it wants to generate this consciousness, using words that I don't like to use, a mechanism of control that you run through your own belief systems. So you put that on a micro scale and a macro scale through your future generations, and on a macro scale, we believe in the bigger storylines that they teach in more, so what they call more detail in school systems. There's a bigger so-called education system that is controlling the minds of the masses, no different than the public education system. So people are getting all. This is why these artificial movements nowadays are put out there in a sense, because they are designed to regulate the movement of so-called consciousness, the people thinking how they think. So politics is out there to make you focus in on the energy of them. Where's the power in politics? It's not with the people. It's with the people who are making the moves. Like in reference to politics, I'll reference one thing real quick. Like they just put that lady in there as a representative of one of the parties for this nation. So I mean, beyond that, even that's not even worth repeating. It's just so irrelevant. But uh, there's only saying that to reference the fact that there is zero accountability or connection that that system has with the people, the actual people. They are in contract with uh, zombies. These driver's license, like all this stuff. It's a corporate relationship. So that corporate relationship creates your relationship with education, so-called intellect. And that intellect is not to help the individual or the masses of people expand themselves, expand their consciousness. It's meant to contract, to control. This is what that contract is: your birth certificate, your social security card, your driver's license, so on and so forth. Capital letters in your name. It's a contract. So we are trapped, in a sense, in a contractual agreement with your own downfall. Yeah, like that's what that design is. It sucks you into a world of debt, and that debt relates to death, your own death. So you're living, when you believe those stories and repeat those stories, you're repeating a dead language, a dead form of existence as alive. And if that becomes the norm, then you can sell them whatever they want. So back in the 60s, after the 50s, they had to do something because the racism was just, it was the main character. it was they didn't want the focus to be on them anymore. They were the bad guys, but they were supposed to be the good guys because they're supposed to be the descendants of the ones who freed the slaves, right? But they didn't get that far away from it, did they? Mind you, at the same time, there has never been a separation of parties. It's just been the story. What story has been told? What lie has been told to you about who and what you are? And where you come from, supposedly. They tell you everything. People are wearing their names right now. Their names are on your contract with that system that they profit from. It's been designed to generate that way. This is what redlining is. And people ask for, or say shit like, what is white privilege and all that other shit. Like, there's an actual story that exists. Like, you can't just look the other way from healing. Yeah, there's open wounds, blood, leaking from our reality, our connection with the land, our connection with each other, our connection with relationships, our connection with our future generations. What stories are you going to tell your children? What's your reality? A lot of the times we can get lost in the micro and just say, oh, it's just about this and this and this. There's nothing wrong with that. Choose whatever you want to as a focal point. But in reference to these videos, how I put stuff out, I'm speaking to the macro most. Like, that's micro, is kind of redundant. Um, the macro is very important though because it affects micro, how people affect their future generations. So you got to be around these people. Your kids got to be around these people. So it's important to educate people in the type of education that is functional. Right now, they're not teaching functional education. Obviously, you can't do shit. People don't even know how to read a clock, right? They don't know how to critically think for themselves. It's not designed to do that. So all these things are known. This is the thing that a lot of people get off track of overall. Another subject that I was going to keep for an entire video, but there's so many subjects that are this big, like I just referenced right now, that get washed away because the dialogue, the narrative wants to be controlled by question askers. That's what the magic spell is with a K. It's the question, the incessant question asker, but never actually digesting the information that is being shared in that moment. It's just okay, well, there's that, but what about this? And that type of relationship with information is extremely toxic and self-destructive. So this is what we have working against us who have information that, so you can say, well, what would that benefit? That would benefit people who don't want to share truth, and people who don't want to share truth get something from the lies being the main focus and get something from the truth being withheld. So this is why and I'll name it as that because this is in reference to people who refer to themselves as that illusory word. It's a mindset, it's a type of interaction that exists. If you were to walk into a group over and over and over around, you're going to engage in this because this has happened naturally so many times. This is the type of response you get, and it is in reference to a particular mindset, a so-called white mindset, this engineered mindset that has imagined um, a young adult, with the fake type of confidence. It's like I'm 18 or I'm 19, 20 years old. They still look like babies, and they still are babies, but they have this identity that they have to portray in society that says I'm an adult. So imagine people who fake that. You've seen people who do that, and that type of fakeness is a culture, and that's what that so-called whiteness is. And they're so good at that kind of magic. They develop this blackness that is an illusion that people are even protecting, because it's easy to just buy into that. And it's not to say that uh, blackness is bad, because that's a simplistic approach to this discussion. Obviously, it's not that. Um, it's just that all that is a part of a bigger story, and the bigger story should be the focus, not the subcategory. The subcategory is what has been imposed upon us, but the actual category is the focus. So if we approach it from just blackness, you're approaching it from subcategory, just as if you approach it from whiteness, it's a subcategory. But nonetheless, not to take the importance away from those subcategories are still a part of the entire algorithm, the entire discussion. What people who benefit from that algorithm existing don't want to do is to put focus on those subcategories to avoid losing those privileges and taking responsibility for shit that like a child would run away from taking responsibility from doing something stupid. That nobody here right now is responsible for any of what needs to be done. In fact, before we start doing the discussion about like who's gonna get whoopings and all this, it's not gonna be you're gonna get a whooping. Just calm down for a fucking minute. We're trying to say that there's information that needs to be shared and expressed about the original people of this land. Before you want to jump into telling us how we should approach this discussion, please just take a moment to allow us to investigate this storyline for ourselves. And if you want to be a real help in any sense, instead of asking us all these questions about, okay, well, now what? Well, it's not about you. You're asking now what in that tone of voice. We haven't even researched the story yet. And you obviously don't even give a fuck about this whole thing. And it's very important to us. So we need to do this. And if you're not a part of this discussion, then so be it. And that might be an ego hit, but oh well, that's what happens. And we've been living with the ego boost of Western civilization for so long. Take a fucking seat for one moment. Relax, chill out. Let us speak amongst ourselves, because we're still speaking with your tongue. We can't help. This shit just comes out of us without, there's shit that it's so, your voice is so in our heads that we can't hear ourselves. Like after my vow of silence, when I actually started speaking, what I said in the video right after that is that your voice resonates through your entire skeletal system. You can feel the vibration of your voice in your toes. I can feel this right now because I was allowed to do it after that year of silence. Now I can still go back to that. Oh yeah, that I remember that feeling. But it's something that you can't necessarily do unless something like that. But there's, I say that to say that there's so much more that we're missing out on because we're just accepting the vibrations of this nonsense and allowing that to vibrate our skeletal system and all our other systems. And our systems are literally shutting down in every way, physically, psychologically, spiritually, and everything that goes in within all those. And what many of us are saying is that the systems that we are accepting as the norm are designed to do that to us. So this is your they, this is, and the people, there's people who benefit from that program because that's their army. The army is the people, just as you have to have character, like I said, characters in a movie, you need to have an army if you're going to do all this shit. So that was the army to play the good guy, the superheroes of the world. They attack all these, they do all this stuff around the world and say, look what we did for you. But when you're in trouble, you don't get any kind of protection. So these storylines are it's money changers. They're money. They're moving money. So it's a design that the masses are meant to influence by investing their belief into the storyline. So when you invest your belief into the existence of their beautification project for humanity, then you're in an agreement, a contractual agreement with where they want your so-called evolution to focus and where you come from. So that includes where you come from. So they're telling you that you come from monkeys. They're telling you that you're on a spinning ball, hurling through space at billions of miles, spinning at millions of miles per hour, and the sun is 93 million miles away. Meanwhile, NASA's getting $65 million a day. They're telling you they're putting flags and space people, astronauts on the moon. They're showing the movie Armageddon with all this disaster and terror. The fact that space programming is so much in kids, dinosaurs included, dinosaurs and evolution, kids programming, and the public education system, the fact that that's in there so much should be a clue into what you're dealing with. So let me check the chat again real quick. How's the audio? Let me excuse me, let me check the audio again. So all right. Let me go back to the in the 70s. They started to install the drugs because it was still kind of like militant in the 60s. That was the strength, that was the power. So in the 70s, they transitioned the strength and the power to these blaxploitation movies, and the black power was now the pimp and the gangster and the drugs and the dancing. That all that was a disco era. That was 10 years long while they was so-called white people was focusing on space, and also the disco area was just about dancing and drugs and sex. It was just, that was the main control measure for that. And then also they started to install this or amplify the American dream. So in the 70s, they started to do the boom of appliances. They were doing this in the 60s too, but they only did it in the 60s to create that American dream kind of mindset. And then in the 70s, it was like, all right, we're going to make this a thing now. Let's put it in the middle class, not just higher, upper class people that can have this stuff. Let's make everything plastic and accessible. So they started putting microwaves and TVs and all this other shit into the 70s to generate what was going to be the next era of human focus. So the first to add on to, all right, well, now what do? We already went to the moon. What the fuck do you do after you go to the moon? Well, you buy a fucking microwave and you go to school and you get a Hungry Man TV dinner and you get some toys and play Nintendo. They started that shit, video games, late 70s to close out the 70s. And in between all of this, the fear and all that other stuff that's going on is emphasized. Like I said, they, just as they go to war every so often, whatever, 10, 20 years, or do something strategically in reference to war, they do something strategically in reference to your consciousness, or whatever you want to call that, your focus, the mind controls. It changes over decades. So there's a fear stream frequency, and then there's a focus or a conscious frequency that gets interwoven into the military industrial complex stream that is pretty much the manipulator of fear, or at least the centerpiece for fear. So that was in the 70s, early 70s into the 80s. Like I said, war is interwoven in between all this. It fits into this timeline. Into the 80s, you had the expansion. The disco's dead now. Let's start to move into the new era of music and focus. So that was the activation of MTV and the television. So it's not just dancing and drugs in real life and partying in the clubs. Let's move it to the house. Let's move it to expand it, this debauchery. It's so let's kick it off and let's really get these generations of people to destroy themselves, not just psychologically and physically with the drugs, but through their lineage. Let's start to get them onto the plastic foods. Let's start to get them onto the plastic education. Pull them away from the family. Activate the American dream even harder. Make it harder to live, because now they're on drugs. So now the money that they would normally have to just survive in the so-called American dream, in the so-called free world, now they're lost with the focus from drug problems and like all the war and all this other stuff that's going on. It's just making it harder for the original people, in particular, the original people of the land, in order to maintain control of the entire the entire narrative. So the reason why so-called black people are hit so hard is to maintain the illusion of power that are the pillars of, and Joe Rogan does it all the time, but somebody else was just Russell Brand was just talking about this recently. He just dismissed chattel slavery and so-called everything that's happened to so-called black people in the Americas, to put on a pedestal what did he say? It was the glory of the forefathers. So it was like, oh yeah, this is you can't just only talk about the racism that Thomas Jefferson's his nickname was like Sharp Blade or some shit like that. Uh, you can't just talk about how bad they were. You have to acknowledge, basically telling you to shut your fucking mouth. I have the power of what you should be focusing on. Because this is the problem here. This is somebody like that. He tells so-called white people what's okay to think and how it's okay to say some shit like that. It's okay to dismiss an entire perspective. So that's what's being told out there, is how to refer to that storyline. How quickly, how fucking arrogant and how dismissive. The audacity to just ball up so-called racism, or not so-called racism, but racism, that whole discussion, ball that up into just to make your little funky ass truths, like little 10-minute video. You dismiss that entire storyline to build up this identity of the forefathers. It doesn't surprise me at all, because obviously that individual is out there to do that. But this is what I'm saying. This is why it's so important to tell all angles of this story. It's not about just one side. This is how, in reference to where I approach this storyline, how characters in reference to people are being used to maintain control over the masses. So so-called black people are a representation of the entire people of the world. People who have had their land stolen by a higher power, so-called higher power. That program, the head of that system, at least that we can see, obviously, is bullshit. The way they're telling the story, we're still living. We're the last ones to realize the story. Everybody else knows their story. Like the majority of other people, they have some kind of connection with the storyline. It's been told to them. So-called black people in the United States, they don't have anything, and whatever they do have has been given to them by the same people who enslaved them into chattel slavery. So you tell this story, and when you tell that story, say you get the response is, okay, well now what? Okay, so that's another form of dismissiveness. It's another form of deflection. It's another form of control. Now what is not for you to ask? That story was not told. If now what is the response, then you're not dealing with somebody that's using the human part of their brain. They're using something in reference to the ego part of their brain, and to put it lightly. Some people, they're using the asshole part of their brain. And largely the dismissive approach to this discussion is the asshole part of the brain. The asshole part of the brain is the education system. That's what the whole thing is. It's an illusion. It's a lie that we accept as the norm. And this is what we're trying to say. People say, "Oh, what's next?" Well, before you want to move somewhere forward, you need to understand what you're standing on. You can't just get up and start walking. It's a fucking minefield out there. I can tell you from experience. I wandered into the fucking New Age community for a few years, and I know what that is. My naive ass went into the military right after high school. A lot of other things, reasons added up to that in reference to, how my whole upbringing, not having any guidance or anything. So, I mean, that makes sense, but people wander into this shit And if you don't share your side of the story to help that, I mean, that's what the experience is for. That's what wisdom is. I mean, what the fuck is wisdom for? They attack your elders so that there's no wisdom keepers anymore. So if you don't know where to step, they say, all right, here, welcome, you're 18 now. Go step out into that minefield. Good luck. In the military, they put you in a literal minefield. So now, like I've been saying in previous videos, they test everything out in the military first. Then they test it to move it and use it on the civilian population. This is why I was saying veterans are a threat to this system, which is why veterans are attacked. The suicide rate is not a mistake. The homelessness and poverty with veterans is not a mistake. These are not mistakes. You're a threat. And one of the biggest threats. You know how to organize. You know how to be disciplined. You know how to move. You know how to survive. You know how to communicate if you're in any kind of leadership position. You know how they move. So that alone, I can go on and on and on and on. But that's why they attack veterans. That's why veterans are on the streets. That's why veterans, that the rate for suicide is through the roof. So this is why poverty fits into, it's a population control mechanism. If you're impoverished, the chance of you going to the military are higher than somebody else who has those resources. So you put a particular group of people in poverty so they can send their future generations off to die. Boom, population control. And the ones that you don't get to go off, the other numbers you affect with Planned Parenthood. Put those in the communities. So these are obvious attacks that are being dismissed when you say that, they don't know how to accept it as a focal point. Like, this is a focus. If you were looking at military strategy to attack a particular group of people, you'd have to be a total ignoramus to say, well, there's no a particular attack on that group of people. They put the guns, they put the drugs, there's still liquor stores, there's still the food, the poverty, the redlining, the Homestead Act, the head right system, on and on and on. All of even in your movies, your music, gangster rap, all of this has been confirmed. We've confirmed it. We know this shit. We know the attack on us. We don't need you to know. We don't give a fuck anymore. There was a point when many of us did give a fuck. We don't give a fuck anymore. We don't need anybody else to know. The people who need to know are the ones who know they need to know. They'll get there, and the ones who won't, they won't. And it's not a destination. It's an ongoing movement. That's the problem. That's why they are censoring. It's to stop organic movement so they can amplify inorganic, artificial movement. Censorship is cutting down intelligence. Let that be clear. To censor is to inhibit intelligence. And what they are doing is, you can see in their so-called educations, it's not to expand upon intelligence, it's to inhibit intelligence. So in their media, they're even inhibiting intelligence. And the reasoning behind the inhibiting of that intelligence is to maintain control. So bouncing from story to story as if which one is more important than the other is the problem. You don't have control of your own narrative. That's the problem. To have somebody else control your narrative, this is what politics is. they could see how many people. The votes don't matter. They pick whatever they want anyway. They obviously did. I mean, they did it in your face with Kamala. It's just how it is. So we've already known that. We've been saying that. But the people who still believe in that system, it's still being told them. So every time you accept their power over you, when they do something as blatant as that, that gives them the energy, the it's like them stepping on your back to step on to the next step of control. So if you believe in that story and voting and all that, the American dream, this is all a narrative. That's all it is. It's a narrative. And the controlling of your narrative is where that's like the gold, right? That's that's in the New Age community they call it the moment. Well, you can call it stay in the moment. It's bullshit. It's just, you transfer this stuff up to different communities, frequencies. You can see that it's the narrative is the moment. So like I said earlier, when you say something and somebody says, okay, but and this, they're not really able to empathize. That's a proof that they're not really able to empathize, at least sympathize, but largely not able to empathize with the heart of why you're saying what you're saying. That's what powers the inability to even acknowledge your story, is the lack of ability to empathize with it, so they can't even empathize with your humanity. So your story is irrelevant, so much so that it could just be dismissed on a worldwide scale. This is what I said. This is some of the stuff that I was referencing in reference to people like Russell Brand, why they're so dangerous. To someone like that, he represents one of the good white people. You see what I'm saying? Like, that is a different kind of whiteness. It's not the same. It's a future whiteness. So to buy into that is what is at the core of generating all of the other things that add on top of that. That's at the core of the okay, but. It's the controlling of the narrative. So in the New Age community, they control you control yourself by buying into the bullshit that of what they tell you to that your narrative should be about. Your narrative needs to be about this: space, aliens, hybrid children, channeling information. Let's see, fucking tantric sex or abstinence, yoga, breathing, and obviously none of this shit's bad. I mean, it's all good in its own, but the atmosphere, the narrative creation of it is the problem. That's the magic. That's the gold of it. That's the gold part. The rest is just the insulator on the core, on that cable. The core of that cable, that golden center. The rest, it wouldn't be able to function as efficiently as it can if it didn't have that insulation. So it's not to say that it's not important. It's just to say that there's other parts of that mechanism that harness more energy, and right, you can label importance to that. But nonetheless, sorry, I keep hitting the mic. It's night, so yeah, the librarian house. What's up? I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a bullshit analyzer. Yeah, exactly. Peach, you must respect. And the chat, Josephine, thank you. Respect, thank you. peace and makes sense. Okay, so yeah, so back to so I can transition back to what I was talking about in the beginning, the military the attack on the veterans, knocked that out. No leaders, no strength, no strategy, no organization. Good, got them. They're done. Education, got them. We can put them into the workforce. Amplify through creating superheroes for certain communities. Now that you have control of their narrative, you said we went to space. Now what? Now will we tell you now what? What the fuck you mean now what? We went to the moon, bitch. We can do whatever the fuck we want, and we say that we're going to buy a bunch of shit, take a bunch of drugs, have a bunch of sex, and do the American dream. How about that? Does it sound fun? All right. 70s, Wolf of Wall Street and all that shit. Cocaine and drugs and cars, all that stuff. Activate it, go. Distract the hell out of people. Pump the bodies full of. Back then, the vaccines back then were drugs. Like put into the community. They're putting that into bodies. They're putting that into babies, future generations. So. So much bullshit. So yeah, the 80s, they established where it was going to go in the 70s. In the 80s, it was hit hard to snuff out once again any kind of power movements that were going to come back up after the distraction of the disco era in the 70s. They didn't want any fires to come up after the embers were snuffed out in the disco era in the 70s. So in order to make sure that none of those embers sparked any fire in the 80s, they hit you with the drugs, the crack epidemic. They hit you with the guns and putting the guns in the communities, and they took that Gary Webb out in the San Jose, who reported on them putting the drugs and the guns and the Contra era, all that stuff, into the communities. There's another ping that you want to put if you want to talk about a focus on a particular people. They didn't go into the so-called white suburban neighborhoods and put drugs and guns in that community. They didn't do that. So there's a particular attack on us. Let us deal with this. We need to fucking understand how to psychologically get out of that. Shut the fuck up for a moment and let us deal with this. Don't try to, like that Matt Walsh so-called comedy documentary, whatever it was about racism, that was shit like that is what controls the narrative. So it makes your awareness of yourself laughable, and it makes them the controller of your narrative, so much so that they can laugh about it now. And then they put it on the Joe Rogan Experience and say, okay, well, now we can extra laugh about it because now we have an intellectual discussion about it, and now it's confirmed, yes, this is laughable. And then they tell you, in order to get their fake masculine control with this manosphere, they put that shit out there. These are little clubs, like boy bands. That's what the manosphere is. Back in the 90s, that's what they started with it was boy bands. Now it's the manosphere and all that other shit. I keep hitting the mic, sorry about that. So yeah, it's whatever it is, it's a controlling of your narrative. For men, they do it with different things. For women, they do it with different things. But regardless, it's done with something. It's also done with particular people. So races of people, so-called races of people. Well, they don't even know what the fuck. They all call them black, and we'll call us the white ones. We're the good ones. We're the best country in the world, and we're the good ones of the best country in the world. Yeah, we did some fucked up shit to get where we are today, but who hasn't? Come on, guys. It's funny, right? No, shut the fuck up for a moment. Well, who made you the MC of humanity? Shut the fuck up already. Let us talk about, let us discuss amongst ourselves what we've just been put through. Jim Crow, chattel slavery, all the shit that goes on. Let us walk backwards through this shit before you want to tell us what we should be doing to go forward. How about that? If we're in a big ass room talking about it, how about that? How about we just walk slowly backward and then, oh no, but now you can't even do that because now we're all attacked, right? The shots and all this other stuff. Oh yeah, we're all enslaved now. And that's exactly why they did that shit. We're all to create that mentality. That's what Black Lives Matter was. It was like, oh, okay, well, we can't talk about, all slaves, all the people being enslaved. So we got to emphasize, we got to create a character. All right, put Black Lives Matter out there. Yeah. And then when they put that out there, it's like, yeah, look at that. Boo, it's blooming out there. Oh, Black Lives Matter. Look at it bloom. It's like a fucking flower. A black flower growing out of the soil of destruction and whiteness, and it's just so beautiful. Look what you guys. We didn't do it. Sorry, I almost slipped up there. We didn't do it. You guys did it for yourselves. Look at you. So why would they do that? Because they know it's gonna fail, because it's not organic anyway. But it's meant to fail, to give fake acknowledgement, to give fake healing from racism and chattel slavery and everything attached to it. See, they want to just say racism. It's not just racism. There's so much more. See, you have to get complex, and look at it from complexity. They want to get real involved in dissecting certain things that really don't make any they don't mean anything. They don't need to do it. But certain shit that is relevant to our storyline and relevant to removing the illusory power that they have over the masses of people, excuse me, certain stuff like that, nah, we just got to be very vague. We'll call it racism. Ha 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 ha. Racism. It's out there. Look at white people out here talking about racism. Look at these funny white people. And they put some funny ass liberal out there, say some dumb ass shit, and then, the Republican over there. We did it. We got the damn racism discussion handled, and we're going to put our stamp on it, and we're going to put it on Joe Rogan. Boom. Message approved. This discussion has been case closed. We laughed at it. Let's move on. Black Lives Matter was a joke. It was a mockery, and even those people know that it was put out there by them. So, it's all done now. What do we got to move on to now? Now let's move on to the discussion. Now that storyline has been taken care of, let's move on to the human. Everybody's enslaved now, right? You guys are enslaved. Yeah. You guys are enslaved, right? Oh, so now you're just like the black people. You're just like the black. They're whispering into people's ears. Hey, psst, psst. The Irish were slaves. That's the shit. This is what they put on social media. That's what the algorithm does. Hey, psst, psst, by the way, your black friend that's been sharing all that black information, talking about how he's slavery this and slavery that. Well, we'll hit him with this when next time he says something. The Irish were so that's how they get you controlled, to get you in that micro storyline, and you're never going to address the macro. You're never going to come back and maintain the narrative, because the narrative is controlled for you. You got it down to a color. You got it down to a focus. It doesn't have to be anything in particular. It's just whatever it is, it's there. Because in reference to a point, which is your ever expanding narrative that you have within you. It has to start somewhere. And then once you get it going, something changes inside of you. It's very similar to when you stop thinking that this system has any power over you, and that this system has any power over anything, over anybody. When you start to realize the illusion and start to let go of your belief, because it's not so much as that people say that all the time, but what it really boils down to is where you put your focus to, your mental frequencies that's your gold. So the majority of your time, your attention, that's life, that's living gold. So if you are generating that into a plastic narrative, you're putting gold currency into a plastic narrative. That plastic narrative is going to shorten not your, like, when people talk about physical lifespan, but the essence, the potency of your lifespan. So the quality of your quantity, it gets affected. And like I was saying before, it doesn't matter what it is. You can focus on the body. You can focus. People focus on the new age. People focus on the body. This is the main thing right now in the mainstream is have them do something. So they got ladies locked down with focusing on their bodies. So and it's easy to do that because they have such a relationship with their body with reproducing babies. So it's easy. It's a no-brainer. So, and it's also adding to insecurities. So there's a positive of, oh, look at me, I'm a gym rat. Now look at my abs, look at my ass, look at my arms, look at my, I've been working out, so my facial structure is even better. And that's also sex programming for men. So you have the men and the women locked down. And that's on, like I said, this is time, this is currency. How much time is focused into that? No different than taking men and women and putting them on video games. So like I said, this starts at a certain time frame. The video game part was a big part of the program of the late 70s going into the 80s, and mostly the 80s. So they started with the plastic era, what I'm calling like the plastic area, because they had like metals, utilities, stoves, and all that stuff was like hard. It was the end of the make shit so it lasts American era. The 40s, 50s, 60s, the 70s was when they started making plastic shit. So they had to make plastic shit cool. It was like the late 70s, but the end of the middle of the 70s, the beginning of the 70s, it was like the dying off of that old strong stuff. And in the 80s, it was just buying into consumerism. So planned obsolescence. Just buy a bunch of shit, it's going to break. That's how you control people and also impoverish people. So they sold that on and on and on every day, something new all the time. You buy into it. And then as you're doing all of this, you're teaching your kids to do, this is how you live. So they're buying into the dream. And that's happening because you have no stories to tell. You don't have any connection with your ancestors. You don't know any. You don't see any importance with teaching your relationship because there's no benefit. It's not going to help him survive. It's not going to be something that. It's not something that the system feels good about. If you bring up anything about history, this is why they call you to call you something. They gave you that name. African American, Negro, all that other shit. They gave you that. When you say anything other than what they call you, it automatically makes them uncomfortable. It's an instant insecurity trigger. Because you have a different narrative, and that narrative cuts to the core of what they pride themselves with. Largely, the whole essence, their whole foundation is affected by you just owning who and what you are. This is why enslavement of the Western, the head of the Western world right now is so important. And it's not racism. In order to, it is racism. Well, I'm not saying it to say that. I'm saying it to say that it's not racism in the way that white people say that it's racism. It's like, no, they're saying it's racism to make you not look into the importance of the connection to who and what you are. To shut that down by limiting the discussion to an emotional frequency. This is why they trigger you with killing people on the streets. And the cops, the slave patrol amplified, evolving into what it is today. And the justice system is just an extension of the slave catchers, the slave patrol. So when we say that, we're talking about power. That is the government. Where did the government come from? Where did they start to inflict their power? How did they do that? By starting that slave patrol. Who were the slaves that they were going after? The ones that they owned. The ones that their names that running around. My slave is running around over here somewhere. He got his name on him. Branded like a cow, like chattel slavery. Your future this is the difference between slavery. The people get angry when you start laughing at the whole Irish. What about the Irish? They were enslaved too. No, we're not talking about slavery in reference to slavery. Obviously, the chattel slavery discussion is a different discussion compared to regular slavery around the world. That's the end of that discussion. There's nothing else that needs to be said on that. Chattel slavery is another beast. And that is different than just... So you bringing up Irish slaves is irrelevant to this discussion. Irish slaves were not involved in chattel slavery. So that discussion point is irrelevant. I'm going to take 10 seconds on that note. So this is why I say something like racism. I say people say racism because that's what's comfortable for people that aren't really versed in this discussion. First of all, let us decide where we need to go, how we need to walk out of this hole we've been digging ourselves in, and with the help of a particular group of people. It's not one or the other. That's how they want to tell you. Well, what about black on black crime? Hold the fuck up. You trying to control the narrative again. You can have both at the same time. You can have people inflicting harm and destruction on a particular group of people, and that harm being installed into the psyche of that people so they can inflict that harm against themselves. You can have both at the same time. Don't let them control the narrative by involving you in their emotional outbursts of insecurities. That's not your responsibility. I don't engage in it anymore. So I like to have fun with it, and I'll just, push the limits as far as I want to go based upon my interaction, because it's happened before. I still play disc golf as a side note, a little disc golf commercial. I'm still playing 5 years now. If you are looking for something to do, you want to get outdoors a little bit more, anybody ages, it doesn't matter. The youngest to the oldest, you can get out there and move at your own pace. It is the most healthy thing that I've done, or at least one of the most healthy things, top 3 at least, most healthy things I've done in my entire life. It's so much fun. I'm an athlete historically anyway, so I like being outdoors. I like throwing stuff. I was a pitcher in high school, baseball, basketball. I played basketball. I like accuracy. I played golf regular, for recreationally for a little bit of time, and all of these have some kind of vibe that's similar in disc golf. And so if you've played any of that, any of those sports, then chances are you're going to really enjoy learning how to play disc golf and playing disc golf. It's very easy to pick up. It's very fun. It's very non-impact. I actually just did a disc golf clinic with kids ranging in grades from fourth grade to eighth grade, teaching them how to play disc golf, or at least introducing them to the sport. And they pick it up so quick. It's very healthy. Get the kids out there free on the courses. Give them discs. This is what other programs I'm working on. Getting discs into veterans programs in community colleges. So I'm putting starter sets together and putting them in community colleges to get veterans out there on the course and start playing. And they don't have to pay for anything. They got discs that they can just have. The program that I was doing for the kids, I was also giving the kids, each of them got 3 discs or more if they were really interested to take home with them. Some of them are going to be interested in play, some of them won't. It was just a summer program, so it's not like they came out. They went to seek that sport, but since they were there for that amount of time, then they got introduced to it and was out there just learning. So anybody else can do it, and it's very healthy, very fun, and low impact. The main thing I want to say: low impact on your body. You don't have to do too much. You move at your own pace, and get yourself, get your kids outside. So that's my little disc golf commercial for the moment. Back to what I was saying. Shit, what the hell was I saying? Controlling of the narrative. How how our discussion has boiled down to what they call just race and racism, which is fucked up in itself. It's like, wait a second. How can you be so cavalier with this discussion? How could you be so loose with something that's so critical to our reality? That alone, that insensitivity alone is fucked up. And another reason why we just don't even want to fuck with you. Like, out off everything. We don't even want to fuck with you. And there's nothing wrong with that. Because part of the discussion is trying to figure out what the fuck, which tribes we're coming from. It's relevant. It exists. We need to organize it. This is why they had that 23andMe shit out there and all the ancestry stuff with getting your DNA so they can control that discussion, that narrative. You have an inherent desire to find out more important information about yourself, who and what you are. And just coincidentally, they have the actual science that shows you who and what you are. Get the fuck out of here. So it's controlling of information, your genetic code, and your psychological approach to discussions and everything. Now you can just channel your information, your energy, your observation of yourself into the version of reality that they want you to see yourself as. So, the 80s, video games, plastic, American dream, still got drugs in the community, still got guns in the community, heavy duty. They was pushing the war. You had the Cold War going on. All these, well, like I said, I'm not going to go through all these wars, but you had just know that wars are interwoven within this timeline the same way this timeline is interwoven within your reality. It's the same thing. It's all tied into itself like a DNA strand. Just imagine that, and all these ladders in between are how you see it, how you connect the dots. So breaking that genetic structure, and then it activates your own. But you have to go through each rung like a ladder and break each one. And that takes time and patience and focus and discipline and all these things that are basically destroyed if you engage in an excessive amount of social media and screen time and all this other bullshit. And they're trying to sell that as the evolutionary peak of humanity. Like I said, they are the beautification agents of humanity. We are polishing humanity into the future. So, war is how they maintain that facade, the superhero. You maintain the facade of interaction with the superheroes through this idea of voting and democracy, what they call democracy. And then, like, and here's another example. As soon as you start talking about democracy, then they start, well, what about, so what are you saying? You social and all that? Nah, man. See, that's the one I'm saying, just to warn you, if you're gonna talk about any of this shit with anybody, don't even pay that stuff any mind. Just kind of cut the discussion short. If that's happening, just see it as like commercials. When I see if skip ad, if that kind of shit, if people get in my face and and they start going on and on and on that verbal diarrhea, I'm about to skip that ad. Cause it's an ad. It's a commercial for some other bullshit. And they don't even know what that bullshit they're talking about. I will skip that. This is why people don't hang out with a lot of people a lot of times. This is why people don't have a lot of discussions with a lot of people a lot of times. That are any of any depth and relevance on a deep level. This is why they tell you, like, you can't talk about politics and religion. That's a control measure. And people believe it. They that's a religion in itself. Not talking about do not talk about religion, not talk about politics is a religion. And it's it's at the epicenter of a lot of this bullshit. It starts to affect your ability to critically think. So it's so much so like the internet. Like, you don't think it's the American dream, and that whole idea that I was just explaining is the mirror image of that is you giving your power away to these artificial entities selling you storylines. All right, so 80s, drugs, video games. Okay, again, how this is a mirror image. Literally creating worlds for you, video games. Literally sucking your time by your golden moments by literally locking you into that scope, that golden scope. And harnessing that energy. What are they doing with that? They already see it. You could already see they're selling it back to you. They're using the ads. And that's how they're telling you what they're doing. That's the whole agreement right there. We're telling you what we're doing to you, and you still go along with it. So, yeah, that talk will start a fight every time. Yes. So, and the reason why that talk will start a fight is because individuals find power in controlling your narrative. This is what emotional vampires do. They suck you into that world to control you. You've seen or know of relationships like this, or been in relationships like this, where the way that they maintain a connection with you is to control you by generating this argument to suck you into to and that's and then oh, this is a good transition into um, the whole sex programming. So they have amplified this idea of makeup sex. So part of sex being ultimately nothing more than for reproduction. It's not for your relationship. It's not for your husband. It's not for your wife. It's not for your boyfriend and your girlfriend. It's not for any of that shit. It's for making a baby. That's what sex is for. All this other romanticism, literal, coming from Roman minds, romanticizing of your reality, is how they control the narrative and control the world through controlling your narrative by romanticizing your reality. So you romanticize your relationship through their eyes, their reality, their beliefs, what they hold dear and near to them. And largely, this is not an organic thing. This is mind control. This is designed to have an effect on you. No different than that Coco Melon shit is for these babies. Beware of that shit. If you, yeah, I'm not even going to that. But to very briefly go into it, the flicker rate of those videos, the colors, the ratios, the interactions with them, they affect the mind of especially a child, a baby, in ways that are they're comparable to cocaine. It's a form of control that is being installed into the masses of people, their children included, as their babies. And people really take time for granted. This is the 70s and the 80s. I was born in the early 80s. So that's hella decades that I'm aware of. Like, there was still shit in people's kitchens that was from like the 40s and shit when I was a kid. That is, yeah. That's a lot of time frame, a lot of it's just your relationship with time is more important than what they tell you it is. It's not just a thing that is on a calendar. It's not just a thing that's on your wrist. It's not just a thing that you have to do for a certain amount of time for work to get money so you can survive. That's a good example of how powerful it is, though. It's tied into survival. At least on a baseline level, on a physical level, it's tied into that. So what is it? So what is time on a psychological level? If it's fucking with your body to be involved in this so-called American dream and doing that and making that the norm, if that is the norm, what the hell is it doing to your psyche? Your body, your psychological bodies are like so many more exponential like amounts of what is it magnitudes more in reference to vibration, frequencies, the potency of those frequencies, the closeness of those frequencies, those vibrations. It holds more energy, more space, more information, more intelligence. There's so much more in there. So if the physical is locked down, so it's so organized. If that's locked down, then what is happening in the minds of these babies, of these teenagers, of these young adults, of these middle-aged people, of these elders, even now? Elders. Like, not that long ago, people moved into elders now pretty quickly. Like I said, from the 80s to now we're in 2024. It's a long ass time. In reference to information. This is what information is, what happens in time. So if you give your time away, you're giving your information away. You're giving away the golden part of the time. So most of the focus is on the insulation. We're focusing on the wrong part of the cable. So the decade discussion that I'm breaking down is the theme of this video for somebody who's asking. They said they were late. It's not really a specific topic, but there is a theme in reference to decades of control and themes within those decades. What did they look like? How did they affect the masses of people? We can see now, obviously, in this time frame, what was the mode of control for the 2020s? The beginning was this pandemic shit. So what was before that? The 20s, the 10s. They had protests, the Arab Spring, the Occupy movement. This was jumped off in the early 2010s. This was right after the whole real estate shit in 2008. I went out to Cairo. It was a year after. So that was in 2012. So I think Arab Spring was in 2011. And that was before Occupy popped off in the United States and the so-called Western worlds. But just a side note story while I'm telling all these stories. The cool part about that time frame, because I was in the Occupy movement, started off in San Francisco because that was the only one that was starting at that time in the beginning. I think it was September 17th, 2011 was day one. I remember because I made like some shirts and I made some handouts and I had my own speaker and I was like, yeah, we're going to the Federal Reserve in San Francisco. And then when I got there, I was the only fucking person there because everybody went to the Bank of America up the street. And I was like, what the fuck? So I'm here in mass with this dumbass, what was that mask from the V from Vendetta? The name of it, whatever the hell the name of it, mask, the anonymous mask. You know, my dumb ass walking down the street with an anonymous mask on and a big ass speaker and some fucking flyers for Occupy San Francisco. I'm at the wrong damn spot. Had to walk through downtown San Francisco. Yeah, Guy Fawkes. Had to walk through downtown San Francisco. And I'm just looking at the chat right now. Yeah, Guy Fawkes, the port issue. The port issue got these foods. Yeah, the port issue. Yep. Yeah, that toilet paper shit is out of hand. No pun intended. It was it's everywhere. But that's just another thing, controlling of the narrative. And they're laughing at this shit. It's like, oh yeah, well, look how dumb they are. Go out there. They don't know what important is. Ass is so dirty anyway. Anyway. The let's see. So the tens, yeah. So the tens, Cairo. What was I? I was telling a story. Fucking story. What was I talking about? Before. So the chicken sandwich bullshit. Yeah, chicken sandwich bullshit was crazy. Yeah, another narrative, laughing in your face. Ha ha ha. Another thing. Look, that's the psychological undertones that I was talking about. The micro narratives that control your macro narrative. So-called black people don't have a handle on anything, a micro or a macro narrative. The macro and the micro narratives have been both prepackaged and delivered to you by the same people who enslaved your ancestors. There is no identity there. You can't have power without identity. It's just fluff. And it's emotion. And so this is why it's so easy to control people with violence, is because violence is fake connection. It gives off the same vibes as somewhat of a connection, a liveliness. Death is a connection with life. You have zombies walking around. This is why zombies walk around and are so easy to take somebody out. There's a numbness and there's a liveliness with the contrast to that. So this is growing and being more part, focusing on the complexities of the overall control. So and why it's so important for us, our story, to be told from our perspective, in our voice, in our own circles, without the eyeballs and the watchers, the watchful eyes and ears of how we should be discussing this. That's another proof of the problem. We can't even discuss this without certain people being upset. There's your proof right there that there's more to the story. And our story is very, very much so interwoven into your storyline. And in fact, and even more directly, the stomping out and covering over and burning down of our story is very critical to the growing of your artificial gardens, that mythical universe that you are selling to the masses of people to control them, is built on the ashes of our truth, and our justice is sitting there as the seeds, and it's growing in each person in time. But like I said, it goes into the narrative, and you can't do that. That growth can't. The sunlight is your attention. I've never said that before, but the sunlight is your attention. I've never heard that. The sunlight is your attention. That's how you grow things. You grow yourself. You grow your children. You grow your garden. Your time, your attention is your time. And your sunlight is your time and your attention in that time. The activation of that time is the attention in that time, the focus, the ability to critically. Oh shit, a big ass just owl just flew over. A white one. That's crazy. So you're conscious, for lack of a better word. I don't like using that word. These words anyway. Any of this shit. These words, because it's all words. Like I said, it's all words of romanticism. The words itself. So you can be emotional, but the words themselves are romanticized. So conscious, awake, all Republican, like that's why we're back to the whole masculine shit. It's and masculine and feminine stuff. It's a form of narrative control. So your femininity, your beauty standards are based upon the way your ass looks, your titties look, your face looks, that's your standard. There's zero focus on your mental state, your intelligence, your awareness, your relationship with your surroundings, your world, your children. And none of that is put on the pedestal in any kind of way. In fact, it is frowned upon. It's laughed at. It's not normal. It's not cool. It's not hip. No, don't focus on that at all. None, because if you do that, then you have to tell somewhat of the story, because there's a relationship there between the parent and the child that involves storytelling. So that discussion needs to be off the table completely and focus. This is why there's so much of a focus on the working man and the working woman. It's the separation focal point in order to maintain control over the macro narrative. So on top of that, like I was saying, how our discussion fits into that is that if we tell our story to our future generations, this is, in many ways, our story has been criminalized because their story has been forced upon us. You have to send your kids to school, some scholasticism, some romanticized intelligence. That's what scholasticism is. This is all Roman mindsets. And those storylines are the ones that don't want to be exposed, so there's so much of a focus on the future in order to distract you from the past. So they generate an artificial future with NASA, like I said, in the 60s, CERN, planting the seeds of CERN to blossom at the dying stage of the tree of NASA. Plant the trees. It's a different kind of seed. It needs to grow on top of the foliage of the NASA tree. But you have to plant the seeds at the same time. It's not going to blossom. It's not going to flower. It's not going to break through the soil until the NASA tree has shaded that area. And in that shade, like a fucking mushroom, growing up in the in the bark of that shaded NASA tree, CERN pops through and convinces the whole world that they have created some kind of tear in the space-time continuum with their CERN program, and interdimensional beings are coming in. This is where your Alex Jones comes in. This is where your CERN programming, your Will.i.am visiting the CERN station, all that. All timing, all on purpose. And all in, like I said, in reference to the dying of the old programming with cosmology that is completely fabricated for a purpose, for a profit, for control, for many different levels of narrative control. This is why when people ask, well, what's so important? What does it matter? This is everything that I've been talking about, like I've been in reference to narrative control and storytelling. This is where so-called flat earth, or at least just the mainstream Western version of cosmology, why it's relevant. It's relevant because it's a story that has been told by your ancestors. And there are many other stories that have been told by your ancestors, and you're not supposed to know any fucking none of them. If you know any of them, then you are a threat to their programs. So dismiss all of them. Give them their new cosmology, demonize their old cosmology, give them their new story, their name for themselves, something more politically correct, call them African Americans. Just tell them something. Make them proud of this one. They hated they focused their energy because they're so emotional. They're such emotional beings. It was good. It was good to control them with all the N-word programming. And now that that's dying, we need to give them civil rights, and we need to give them a name that they can be proud of instead of a name that they're so angry about. Let's call them African Americans, okay, and let's call them black. Let's call them let them whatever they want to call themselves. That's let's just go with it. But let's push African American because it has no connection to anything, and let's push black because it has connections with powerful meanings and narratives telling energetically that you explain to yourself. So let me look at the comments real quick as I go and catch up from where I was. In ethos type of control, yep. Yep, mockery in your face. That's how they rule by forcing people into their That's how they rule by forcing people into their emotions and dumbing down the real stories, yeah. Once they get over our stories and want to make money off of it. But want us to get over it. Yeah, exactly. Get over it. Get over it. Move on to the next story that we say is important. Stop talking about what you say is important. You you're not mentally equipped to know what importance is. That's why you need to just stay in your little corner, and we'll censor your storylines because we know what is relevant. We know what is supposed to be understood by the rest of the world because we went to the moon, bitch. Don't ask any more questions. We just dunked on you. We are the dunkers. We are the Team USA of humanity. We dunk on people. Intelligence, dunk. War, dunking on people. So yeah, so there's a timing. Like in that information in so how I'm seeing it, you're speeding up time when you're putting more information in your moments by focusing your energy on stuff that has a higher narrative. So you're acting from so each movement, each thought, each vibration of your voice is carrying something more when you have more intention in your moment, in your minutes, in your time, in your information within that time. I'm not here to fuck around. Like I don't have time to waste. We your lifetime is a blip. Why are you waiting around to say something or do something in reference to that which affects all of us? Because in the long run, that's pretty much the only stuff that matters. I mean, when you eat fast food, you're not going to be thinking about that for the rest of your life. That's not the kind of stuff that you think about. That's not the kind of stuff that you want to carry with your whatever it is into your next experience. Putting more emphasis, focusing on the information and the time, puts more emphasis on what you put in your luggage before you leave. When you're focusing on what you're wearing as you're putting shit you garbage to be wearing anyway in your luggage, there's nothing there that is relevant to the essence of who and what you are. It's really relevant to what you've been told you are. So it's easy to recycle energies, beings, if they don't have any sense of self. In the people of the world, who are the most people who have the least sense of self? It's us. We don't even know what to name ourselves. You tell that story, you start that discussion even in public, and it makes people uncomfortable. They will attack you. So we have to get out of that fog, that vogue of not being uncomfortable with our own story. And before that, like I was saying, the levels to this, even wanting to understand that there is a story and that there's a relevance to that story. Why is it relevant? Because largely a lot of the people who want to deflect from your narrative, you connecting with your own narrative, they have to dismiss your relevance. So they say, well, why does this matter? Why does this matter? Why should this matter to me, a regular human being? So what if I'm white? Let's talk human to human. Why does racism matter to me? I'm not racist. And then they tell you what is racist. That's why that Matt Walsh dude in that so-called comedy, the comedy doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. That's just garbage. What matters is what he says after it. And what he said after it was, this is what racism is. Racism is, shit, if I can remember. Oh, basically it's over because you had Obama become a president. So you can't possibly have racism exist if you had a black president. That's how simple they think you are. And many people are that simple. But that's the narrative. Him existing and telling the story that way is the narrative itself. It's not what he's talking about, it's how he's talking about it. Because people aren't going to see that and listen to him. They don't give a fuck about that. They want to reinforce how they feel. So they're going to see the dismissiveness of that discussion between Joe Rogan and Matt Walsh in reference to racism. The laughability of that discussion is a further dehumanizing of you and your storyline and your narrative. So once again, your narrative isn't even relevant. It's not worth even talking about. So So these stories, these relationships, tying this back into something else, another video that I wanted to talk about. These relationships that we have with ourselves is it's very a part of your relationship to power. So your relationship, because relationships in general, in themselves, are powerful. This is why sex is such a tool used to control. It's programmed. Why is it in Disney? Why is it in music? Why is it in movies? Why is the porn industry so big? Why is it pushed so hard? Why did they have to put computer like little phone screens into your hand to put into your children's hand, into your pads, laptops, tablets, like any way to get control of that part of your experience? Why is it so important? It's tuning into those frequencies, not to mention the time that's going in there, but also this is opening up, creating your definitions of self and opening you up on other levels to entities that get into your experience and take over at some point. The American dream is an entity. It's alive. It speaks through people. It shuts down discussions. It turns off parts of reality for people. Controlling of the narrative does the same thing. Because controlling of the narrative is basically like the instruction, the words of what magic, mainstream, like mind control is. Okay, it's a controlling of the narrative. How they do that. That's what the controlling of the narrative is. In a flowery story term, in a scary, it's scary. It's narrative control, and these are the people who control narratives. This is why you have to see them as magicians. So those people are housed on our land. This is why so-called racism, our story, is important and relevant to the whole human discussion. We are very powerful people. Very powerful, very easily. And there's no need to be modest in this discussion. There's things that come very naturally to certain people. We have that. And this is why we are attacked so much. This is why this land was one of the last strongholds to be taken, in order to effectively activate the program that we are, the boot, the 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 system that is alive and well today. And to be so flippant about our story. You're not, when people say racism, you're not talking about racism. You're talking about a people's story. To use that word is just commercial and part of the fucking problem to begin with. Let me go back. Start it. Maybe I'll restart it. All right. I'll restart it.